graduated college in May of 1982, and a friend of mine said that he would help me start with my big New York City adventure, because I knew I always wanted to move to New York City. And his parents would give me free room and board for the summer while I got up on my feet and got my first job. Now that was exciting, except that my friend's parents were German immigrants who were very, very regimented and very authoritative. And they had various ideas about how life should be and shouldn't be. And unfortunately, one of those was that gay people were bad. And my friend, who's straight and supportive of me, said, you can stay with us and everything will be cool, but I gotta warn you that you have to be closeted. And so that was a little bit of a spiritual dilemma for me, because I'm out of college, I can finally be my own person, but sorry, we gotta maintain the charades a little bit more. You know, you gotta keep it under wraps. But when I wasn't at their home on the Upper West Side, I was out in the streets and I was experiencing the gay male life of New York City. I was going to bars and I was going to clubs and I was cruising guys in the street, and it was, you know, it was like Candyland. It was really, really exciting. Now, I was coming from a not so sophisticated little town in Massachusetts, and I was in the big city. So it was a giddy time, it was an exciting time. I found Christopher Street. I don't know whether somebody said, well, if you really want to know where the action is, go to Christopher Street. Christopher Street in the West Village was the nerve center of the gay community. It's where everybody hung out. The streets were lined with bars and clubs and backroom bars and peep shows. Everything was there. Or the street was there and you could cruise somebody on the street and get to make some new friends. Or go down to the pier where, you know, the kids were dancing and you know, and hanging out and learning to Vogue, and you know, it was so vibrant in the 80s. And so I found my way to Christopher Street, and the bars closed at 4 a.m. So you could get a lot done in any given night. I usually waited till the weekends. And I remember one particular weekend, one Saturday night in the late summer of 1982, I had not scored that night. And so I was walking up Christopher Street, coming back to 7th Avenue, ready to take the number 1 train up to the Upper West Side where I was staying. And so I was walking, and I noticed a cop car was driving so slowly down the street towards us. I mean, not at us, but just driving down the street. And the reason why that caught my eye is because the light was on in the car, and I could see the two guys in the car. One of them was speaking through a loudspeaker so that it was coming out, you know, into the environment. You know, he was broadcasting, and I suddenly heard him say, "Okay, faggots, time to go home." And saying it like a little kid teasing you on the playground. But this was a cop. And I turned to somebody next to me and I said, "Did you hear what he just said?" I was incensed, you know, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah," he just shrugged. He said, "The cops do that." So this is where I had this awakening, this little suburban kid who thought that everything was wonderful and that the cops were our friends, suddenly realizing that even the cops were against us. The guys whose jobs we paid taxes to maintain were the same people who were treating us badly. They're the ones who were supposed to be protecting us from any homophobic attacks, and yet they're just as bad as our attackers. So that really stuck with me, and that was one of the first bitter lessons that I learned about everyday life in the gay community. I think that experience, you know, not only disillusioned me, but it also hardened me and perhaps laid the groundwork for me to become an AIDS activist years later, so that when I became an AIDS activist and I was involved in protests where I was arrested by the police, I knew that I was the good guy, and I no longer believe that the police only arrest bad people. I realized that the police are just as crooked, and that they're people who I could fight against, that I had to be resistant against, that they were not part of the good equation, they were part of the bad equation.